My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 34 years old. And I didn't realize my relationship was already over until my boyfriend explained, calmly, clinically, why my unemployment was going to embarrass him. It was a Thursday, 10 a.m., the kind of time that divides your life into before and after. The meeting invite had been vague. Organizational update. That was corporate code for someone is about to lose something. I sat in a glass conference room with 12 other people from product, our laptops open like shields, coffee cooling untouched. No one spoke. We all knew. The acquisition had closed 8 months earlier. New leadership, new priorities. Same lie everyone tells themselves. We're safe. We weren't. The VP didn't waste time. Synergies, streamlining, redundancy. 73 people were laid off that morning. I was one of them. By 11 a.m., my 6-year career fit into a cardboard box. By noon, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage, staring at my phone like it might explain what had just happened. I wasn't fired. I wasn't warned. I wasn't incompetent. I was eliminated. Cold, corporate, surgical. I took one breath, then another, and I called my boyfriend. Hey, he said. I'm grabbing lunch. What's up? I got laid off, I said. Silence. Not concern, not shock. Calculation. Laid off how? He asked. The acquisition, I explained. They cut the entire product division. I'm out. Another pause. So, you're unemployed? For now. I've got 4 months of severance, full benefits, and savings. I'll be fine. 4 months? He repeated. That's it? It's actually generous. But what if you don't find something? I will, I said. This isn't my first downturn. He exhaled slowly. I could hear the shift in his tone, like warmth draining out of a room. I need to go, he said. We'll talk tonight. He hung up before I could respond. That should have told me everything. I spent the afternoon doing exactly what you're supposed to do after a layoff. Updating LinkedIn, emailing contacts, building a target list. I didn't spiral. I didn't cry. I stayed productive. Apparently that was my mistake. He came home at 7 p.m. I'd made pasta, vodka sauce, the one he liked. The table was set. Not fancy, just normal. Like two people facing something together. He didn't sit. We need to talk, he said. I nodded. I've been thinking all day, he continued, and I don't think I can do this. Do what? Date someone who's unemployed. The words hit slower than I expected. I lost my job 8 hours ago. I know, he said quickly, and I'm sorry, but I've worked too hard to build the life I want. I can't be with someone who's going to drag me down. Drag you down? I repeated. You're acting like this is a vacation, he said. You're not even upset. You're just cooking. I looked at the pasta. I'm coping, I said. You're acting like a bum. That word landed heavy. A verdict, a summary, a sentence. I didn't mean it like that, he added immediately. But he had. And in that moment, something inside me went very still. You're right, I said. He blinked. What? You're right, I repeated. You shouldn't date someone who's unemployed. He smiled slightly, already preparing to reclaim control. I think you should pack a bag, I continued, and leave. That was when he realized he'd miscalculated. And the night truly began. For a second, he just stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. Wait, what? He said, a sharp little laugh forcing its way out. No, I'm saying I don't think we're compatible right now. I heard you, I said evenly. My hands were still resting on the edge of the table. The pasta sat between us, steam fading. And I'm agreeing with you. He took a step closer, eyes narrowing. Eleanor, be serious. I am. That's the thing people don't understand about breaking points. They expect them to be loud. They expect tears, screaming, begging, some dramatic performance where the person being abandoned tries to prove they're worth staying for. But there are moments when you don't feel rage. You feel clarity. And clarity is terrifying to someone who's always relied on you being emotional enough to manipulate. You can't just kick me out, he snapped. I tilted my head. Why not? Because I live here. You stay here, I corrected. There's a difference. His jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? It means the lease is in my name, I said, calm as a spreadsheet. It's my apartment. I invited you into it. He froze. Not because he didn't know, because he'd never imagined I'd use it. We'd been together 14 months, met through a mutual friend at a birthday party, one of those nights where everything feels effortless. He was charming, confident, always saying the right thing at the right time. The kind of man who made you feel chosen. 8 months in, he started staying over more. Then he started leaving clothes in my closet. Then his toothbrush. Then it became, why are we paying 2 rents when you have space? He made it sound practical, romantic even. And because I loved him, because I thought we were building something, I let him move in. But now, standing in my kitchen with his judgment still hanging in the air, I realized something I hadn't wanted to name. He hadn't moved in because he wanted a life with me. He'd moved in because it suited him. "Eleanor," he said, softening his voice like he was trying a new tactic, "this is insane. You're throwing away 14 months over one conversation." I stared at him. "No," I said, "I'm ending a relationship with someone who sees me as an accessory, not a person." He scoffed. "That's not fair." "You called me a bum," I reminded him, on the day I got laid off. "I panicked," he said quickly. "Okay, I was scared." "Scared of what?" I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes flicked away for half a second and I saw it, just a flash, like a curtain lifting. He wasn't scared for me. He was scared of what my unemployment would make him look like. That was the core of it, the rotten center. "Your parents would never accept it," he blurted, like he was reading from a script. "My friends, do you know how it sounds when people ask what my girlfriend does and I have to say she's between jobs?" My stomach tightened. There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not "what do you need?" Not "how can I help?" Just optics. I let the silence stretch long enough that he started shifting his weight, uncomfortable. "You're worried about brunch," I said finally. "That's what this is." He threw his hands up. "You're twisting my words." "I'm repeating them," I said. I stood up, slow and deliberate, and walked to the kitchen counter. My phone was face down beside the sink. My keys were there too. The house key I'd given him months ago, like a little symbol of commitment. Back then, he'd kissed me and said, "This feels real." Now it just felt foolish. I picked up the key ring and held it out to him. His eyes dropped to it. "What's that?" he asked, but his voice wasn't confident anymore. "It's you leaving," I said. He stared at the key like it was an insult. Then he laughed, short, disbelieving. "You're really doing this?" "Yes. You're going to regret this," he said, stepping forward. "When you're still unemployed and 6 months eating ramen and wondering where it all went wrong." Maybe that line would have worked on a different version of me. The Eleanor who still believed love meant patience. The Eleanor who swallowed discomfort to keep the peace. But the Eleanor standing in front of him now had just watched her career evaporate in one morning, and she'd still managed to keep her spine intact. I met his eyes. "Maybe," I said, "or maybe I'll be just fine, and you'll be the one with regrets." He tried to glare, but there was something desperate underneath it now. "You're being unstable," he snapped. "This is emotionally unhinged." I almost smiled. It was always the same playbook. If a woman didn't accept disrespect quietly, she was hysterical. If she didn't beg, she was cruel. If she set a boundary, she was unstable. "Pack a bag," I said again, voice calm. "Tonight." He didn't move. He was waiting for me to fold. He was waiting for me to blink first, to reach for him, to soften, to apologize for standing up in my own life. Instead, I walked past him to the hallway closet, and I pulled out the suitcase, the one we'd used on our vacation last summer. His eyes widened slightly. "You're not serious." I dragged it into the living room and set it down. "I'm serious," I said. For a long moment, he just stood there, breathing hard through his nose, like the anger itself was keeping him upright. Then, abruptly, he stormed into the bedroom. Drawers slammed. Hangers clattered. He was packing loudly, performatively, like he wanted to punish me with sound. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, listening to the chaos and feeling something I didn't expect. Relief. Because as he moved through my apartment like a wounded animal, I could finally see what I'd been ignoring. The way he always needed the nicest thing in the room. The way he judged people who made less than him. The way he'd insisted we split dinner bills down to the penny even when I'd made more. The way he'd laughed once, just once, when my friend mentioned being laid off during the pandemic. "That would be my worst nightmare," he'd said. "I could never be with someone who didn't have it together." I had heard it. I had just filed it away. Now it came back like a warning I should have taken seriously. He emerged from the bedroom with the suitcase half-zipped, clothes shoved in carelessly. He didn't look at me at first. Then, at the door, he finally turned. "This is insane," he said again, voice shaking now. "You're ending us because I had standards." "No," I replied. "I'm ending us because your standards don't include compassion." He swallowed. His expression flickered, something like fear, maybe, or disbelief. Then he reached for the key still in my hand. I dropped it into his palm. He stared at it for one more second, like he wanted to throw it at me. Instead, he pocketed it, grabbed the suitcase handle, and yanked the door open. "You're going to come crawling back," he said, voice low, bitter, "when reality hits." I didn't move. "I won't," I said softly. He hesitated, just a fraction. Like part of him was waiting for me to call his name. I didn't, so he slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The apartment went quiet. The pasta was cold. and I sat down at the table alone. I took one bite. It tasted better than it had any right to, because for the first time in months, the air in my home felt like mine again. And as I chewed, my phone buzzed on the counter. A notification. A LinkedIn message from a recruiter. I stared at the screen, not because I believed in fate, but because I knew something now. He thought he'd left me at rock bottom. He had no idea I was about to climb. The morning after he left, I woke up before my alarm. Not with panic. Not with that sick drop in your stomach people warn you about after a breakup. Just quiet. The apartment felt different without him, lighter, like the walls had stopped holding their breath. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, cataloging what was actually true. I was unemployed. I was single. I was not falling apart. That last part seemed to surprise people the most. By 8:30 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and sitting at my desk, the one he'd always teased me for keeping too organized. My laptop was open, my notebook beside it, pages already labeled. Job search. Week 1. I treated it exactly the way I'd treated every major project in my career. With structure. Severance covered 4 months of salary. My savings covered far more than that. I had no debt outside my mortgage and one credit card I paid off monthly. I wasn't desperate. I was focused. I updated my resume with a precision that bordered on surgical. Metrics, outcomes, impact. I rewrote my LinkedIn headline. Not flashy, just accurate. Then I started reaching out. Former colleagues, ex-managers, people I trusted. Not, hey, I'm unemployed, help. But I'm exploring my next move. Would love to reconnect. The responses came faster than I expected. I'm sorry about the layoff. That acquisition was brutal. Let me know if you want an intro. By the end of the first week, I had 3 informational calls scheduled and 2 recruiters circling. And still, nothing from him. I didn't block him right away. Not because I wanted to hear from him, because I wanted to see if he'd say something worth remembering. He didn't. Instead, the messages came in directly. A mutual friend asked if I was okay. Another casually mentioned he'd been telling people I wasn't handling the layoff well. That one almost made me laugh. I was handling it just fine. What I wasn't doing was performing my suffering for his comfort. By week 2, the interviews started. Phone screens first, then panels, then take-home exercises I completed with calm efficiency, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I remembered who I was when no one was watching. A problem solver. Somewhere in the middle of week 3, an email landed in my inbox that made me sit back in my chair. The subject line was understated. Exploring a potential fit. The company name underneath it was not. It was one of the biggest players in my industry. The kind of place people whispered about at conferences. The kind of place people built identities around. The kind of place he had talked about constantly. He'd applied there twice before we met. Been rejected twice. Every time their logo appeared on his feed, he'd made a comment. That should have been me. They don't know what they're missing. One day I'll get in there. I'd listened, encouraged, helped him prep answers, even connected him with someone I knew who worked there. He never got the call. Now apparently I had. The role was Director of Product Strategy, 2 levels above my previous position. I assumed it was a mistake, one of those mass recruiter messages sent to anyone with the right keywords. Still, I responded. Then came the phone screen. Then the first round. Then the second. Each time I told myself not to get attached. Each time I moved forward anyway. By the end of week 5, I was sitting across from the CEO in a video call, answering questions about long-term vision, organizational design, and how I handled failure. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends, and definitely not him. I didn't want congratulations yet. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted certainty. Meanwhile, he finally surfaced. Not directly. Never directly. The first message came from a new email address. I think we both said things we didn't mean. I ignored it. The second came through LinkedIn, from a blank profile with no photo. You're being really immature. Adults communicate. Blocked. By week 4, the tone shifted. Everyone agrees you overreacted. My mom thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. That one made my jaw tighten. I boxed up his things the same night. Clothes, shoes, a watch he'd left in my drawer, a charger. Everything neat, labeled, untouched. I texted him once, from a number he wasn't blocked on yet. Your things are boxed. You can pick them up anytime. No response. Then suddenly, 6 weeks later, the messages turned urgent. You can't keep my stuff hostage. That's illegal. I could call the police. I almost replied. Almost. Instead, I had a mutual friend coordinate pickup through my building's front desk. Saturday, noon to 2, no contact. He came. I didn't see him. Apparently, that bothered him more than the breakup itself. She's upset you wouldn't meet her in person, the friend told me later. I don't meet with people who call me a bum on my worst day, I said. By the following week, the call came. The CEO liked me. The team liked me. An offer was coming. When I opened the letter, my hands actually shook. Vice President of Product Strategy. Nearly double my previous compensation. Equity, bonus. A seat at the table. I accepted within 10 minutes. My start date was 2 weeks out. I spent those weeks setting up my home office, reorganizing shelves, buying a better chair, letting the quiet settle. I didn't think about him. Not until someone told him. I don't know who. A mutual friend. A LinkedIn update. A fake account stalking my profile. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. He found out. And the silence he'd mistaken for failure? It was about to shatter. The first sign wasn't dramatic. No apology essay, no late-night confession. Just a message request on Instagram from an account with no photo and a username that looked auto-generated. Hey, is this you? I stared at it for exactly 3 seconds before ignoring it. Then came an email to my personal address. Congratulations on the new role. Can we talk? I didn't reply to that either. I had learned something important over the last few months. Silence is an answer. But he wasn't done trying. Exactly 3 months after the night he'd called me a bum and walked out of my apartment, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. The only reason I did was because I was expecting a call from my building about a package. Hello? Oh my God, he said immediately. You actually answered. His voice was instantly recognizable, too familiar, too unwelcome. How did you get this number? I asked. I borrowed a friend's phone, he said quickly. Please don't hang up. I just wanted to say, congratulations. Really, I always knew you'd land on your feet. I closed my eyes for a moment. You called me a bum, I said. I was upset, he replied. I panicked. I handled it badly. Is that all? I asked. There was a pause, just long enough to tell me it wasn't. Actually, he said, softer now, I was hoping we could meet for coffee. There's something I wanted to talk to you about. Every instinct I had told me to say no, to hang up, to block the number, to protect the clean, quiet life I'd rebuilt. But there was a small, unflattering part of me, the one that remembered his certainty that I'd fail, that wanted to see him ask. Fine, I said, coffee. Really? He said, relief rushing in too fast. Tomorrow, I continued, 3 p.m., the cafe near my old building. I'll be there, he said immediately. Thank you. I hung up without another word. I arrived 5 minutes early. He was already there. That alone almost made me turn around. He had never been early to anything. He looked different, not unrecognizable, but diminished. His posture was tighter, shoulders slightly hunched. The expensive jacket he used to wear everywhere was gone. His bag was plain. His eyes looked tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Hey, he said when he saw me, standing up too quickly. Thanks for meeting me. I sat down across from him. What do you want? I asked. He gave a nervous laugh. Straight to business. Okay. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup like it was anchoring him. I heard you're at the company now, he said. Vice President of Product Strategy. I am. That's amazing, he said, eyes brightening. I always said you were talented. You said I was a bum, I replied. The smile slipped. I was wrong, he said. I was stupid. I didn't respond. He filled the silence instead. I've been having a bit of a rough time, he continued, eyes flicking up to gauge my reaction. Financially. There it was. The real reason for this meeting, sliding into place with grim predictability. My company did layoffs last month, Shelm, he said. I wasn't cut, but they eliminated bonuses and reduced salaries by 15%. I see, I said. And I had some expenses I was counting on that bonus to cover. What kind of expenses? I asked. He shifted in his seat. Credit cards, mostly. I raised an eyebrow. And my student loans came out of deferment, he added quickly, and my car payment. And there was this trip I'd already put a deposit on. A trip, I repeated. It was supposed to be with friends, he said defensively. The deposit was non-refundable. So, I said calmly, you went on a vacation you couldn't afford. You're making it sound worse than it is. I'm just repeating what you told me. He exhaled sharply, frustration bleeding through. The point is, I need help. I waited. And you're the only person I know who could actually help me. There it was, the ask finally stepping into the light. What about your parents? I asked. The ones whose opinions mattered so much when I got laid off. He looked away. They've already helped as much as they can, he muttered. And they're not exactly thrilled with me right now. Why not? They think I made a mistake, he admitted. With you. With everything. I almost smiled. I was hoping, he continued, rushing now, that maybe you could help me out. Just temporarily, until I get back on my feet. We were together for over a year. That has to count for something. I leaned back in my chair. How much? I asked. His eyes lit up, hope blooming too fast, too obvious. 8,000 would get me completely current, he said. But even 5 would make a huge difference. I'd pay you back. With interest, I'll sign something. Collateral? I asked. He hesitated. My laptop, maybe some jewelry? I stared at him. Your laptop is worth maybe $200, I said, and I've never seen you wear jewelry worth more than 50. Why are you being so mean? He snapped. I'm not being mean, I replied. I'm being realistic. I took a slow sip of my coffee and let the silence stretch. Watched the hope drain from his face, inch by inch. No, I said finally. What? He whispered. No, I repeated. I'm not giving you money. Not 8,000, not 5, not 100. His face tightened. But you can afford it now. You're a VP. You probably make more in a month than I make in 6. And I earned every dollar of it, I said. While you were calling me a bum, I was networking. While you were booking trips you couldn't afford, I was interviewing. This isn't luck. This is work. That's not fair, he said. That was different. How? I asked. I had savings then. I had severance. I had prospects. And you walked out because being unemployed embarrassed you. His eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake, he said hoarsely. Yes, I said, you did. He reached across the table, stopping himself just short of touching my hand. Please, he whispered. I don't know what else to do. I stood up. I placed a bill on the table to cover my coffee. Good luck, I said, and meant it in the most distant way possible. But don't contact me again. I walked out while he was still crying. I didn't look back. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. The man who had judged my worth by my job title had just asked me to subsidize his collapse. And I felt nothing but certainty. I didn't feel victorious when I left the cafe. There was no cinematic swell of music in my head, no rush of adrenaline, no urge to text a friend and say, you'll never guess what just happened. What I felt instead was something quieter and far more permanent. Finality. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. For a few days after the coffee meeting, fragments of him drifted back into my awareness like dust motes in sunlight. Not memories exactly, more like after-images. His voice cracking when he said, please. The way his shoulders slumped when he realized I meant no. Not right now. Not maybe later. Just no. I'd always thought saying no was something you had to justify, explain, soften, apologize for. I was wrong. No is a complete sentence. And once you learn that, it rewires everything. I threw myself into work as my start date approached, not to avoid thinking, but because I wanted to arrive grounded, capable, unburdened by unfinished business. My new role demanded clarity, vision, authority. I wasn't going to carry old ghosts into it. A week later, the story started. Not from him, never from him. From mutual friends who suddenly felt compelled to check in. Apparently, after our coffee meeting, he hadn't taken the rejection quietly. He told anyone who would listen that I was cold, vindictive, that I was punishing him for one mistake. The story went like this. I'd always been emotionally distant. The layoff just revealed my true colors. I'd changed. Success had made me cruel. It might have worked if people hadn't already known the truth. Too many people had been there when he called me a bum. Too many people had watched him walk out. Too many people remembered how I'd supported him when he was anxious, uncertain, spiraling. The narrative didn't land. The math didn't math. And for the first time in his life, charm didn't save him. I heard his financial situation got worse before it got better. Credit card companies don't care about explanations. Car finance companies don't care about pride. He sold his car, the one he'd been so proud of, the one he'd posted about endlessly, settled part of the debt, bought an old Honda with the leftover cash. I won't pretend the irony was lost on me. He'd once laughed at someone for driving an older car, called it giving up on life. Now, apparently, he was giving up in traffic like everyone else. His apartment followed. He couldn't afford the one bedroom in the trendy neighborhood anymore, broke the lease, ate the penalty, moved back in with his parents at 32. The same parents whose opinions he'd been so worried about when I lost my job. The same parents he'd said would never accept him dating someone unemployed. I heard his mother said something along the lines of, "We raised you better than this." His father reportedly stopped speaking to him for a week. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The satisfaction wasn't in watching him fall. It was in knowing I hadn't pushed. I'd simply stepped aside. The best part came 2 months later. I didn't even know about it until HR flagged the notification. Turns out, when you're a VP, you get alerts for applicants to your division. His resume appeared in my inbox on a Tuesday afternoon, sandwiched between 2 others. I stared at his name longer than I expected. His work history, his carefully crafted objective statement about passion and growth, his cover letter talking about how he'd always dreamed of working there. I remembered all the times he'd said the same thing out loud. That should have been me. Now it was. In a way he hadn't planned. I didn't intervene, didn't block him, didn't boost him, didn't even comment. I forwarded the application to my recruiting coordinator and removed myself from the evaluation process entirely. No revenge. No mercy. Just process. He didn't make it past the initial screen. His experience wasn't quite right. His resume was fine, but unremarkable. His cover letter was generic. There were 15 other candidates who were simply better. The rejection email went out automatically. Another form letter, another closed door. He probably never knew I'd seen his application. Or maybe he suspected. Maybe he'll spend years wondering if I sabotaged him. The truth is simpler and more brutal. I didn't have to do anything. He just wasn't qualified. He never had been. And the entitlement that made him think he deserved that job was the same entitlement that kept him from ever becoming good enough for it. As for me, I'm doing okay. The anger has faded into something closer to understanding. He measured worth in titles, salaries, appearances. When those were stable, he felt powerful. When they weren't, he panicked and hurt people. I used to mistake that for confidence. Now I know better. I've started dating again, slowly, intentionally, no rushing, no auditions. I'm looking for someone who sees a layoff as a chapter, not a verdict, someone who stays when things get uncomfortable, someone who doesn't confuse love with optics. The irony isn't lost on me. He left because he thought unemployment made me less. Now he's underemployed, living with his parents, driving a car he once mocked, probably wondering where it all went wrong. Meanwhile, the bum he walked out on is thriving. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't scheme or wait for revenge. I just kept moving forward. And that, it turns out, was enough. This will probably be the last time I talk about him. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because he no longer occupies enough space in my life to deserve narration. Things settled after that. Quietly. Naturally. The way things do when you stop poking at old wounds just to see if they still hurt. My role as vice president turned out to be exactly what I'd hoped for, and harder in ways I respected. Long days. Real responsibility. Decisions that mattered beyond slide decks and quarterly metrics. I wasn't just contributing anymore. I was shaping things. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere without having to prove it every morning. People at work didn't know my story. They didn't know I'd been laid off. Didn't know I'd been called a bum. Didn't know I'd rebuilt quietly while someone else narrated my supposed collapse. They just knew me as competent. That was enough. Every once in a while, someone would bring him up, usually by accident. A mutual friend mentioning he'd taken a lower-paying role. Someone else noting he was still figuring things out. A casual update delivered with that careful tone people use when they don't know whose side you're on. I never corrected them. I never added details. I didn't need the story to land a certain way anymore. Because here's the truth most people don't like to admit. Closure doesn't come from being proven right. It comes from no longer needing to be. I thought about the moment he'd applied to my company more than I expected. Not out of satisfaction, but curiosity. What had he imagined would happen? That I'd intervene? That I'd rescue him again? This time professionally? That proximity to my success would somehow elevate him? He'd always believed things should open for him simply because he wanted them to. That belief had worked, until it didn't. And when it failed, he blamed everyone but himself. I never told anyone I'd seen his resume. Not out of secrecy. Out of irrelevance. It didn't matter. The system didn't reject him because of me. It rejected him because he hadn't done the work. And that's the part people like him struggle with the most. The idea that no one is secretly blocking them. Sometimes the door is closed because you're not ready. I've learned a lot since then. I've learned that calm is a form of strength most people underestimate. That discipline looks boring from the outside. That silence is often mistaken for weakness by people who need noise to feel powerful. And I've learned that the worst thing someone can do on the hardest day of your life is make it about themselves. If you're listening to this because you're in the middle of a layoff, or a breakup, or a moment where everything you built suddenly feels temporary, here's what I wish someone had told me sooner. Your value is not suspended just because your job is. Anyone who treats your crisis as an inconvenience to their image is telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. Don't bargain. Don't wait for them to come around. Don't shrink yourself to fit their comfort. I didn't get revenge. I didn't need it. I just kept going. And somewhere along the way, The life I rebuilt turned out to be better than the one I lost. That's not luck. That's what happens when you refuse to let someone else decide your worth.